Hello everyone. My name is Diana Oreto, and I run research and the Global Standards Mapping Initiative at Global Blockchain Business Council. We have run a working group on supply chains and critical minerals with blockchain technology, and it is my pleasure today to be joined by the co-chairs Blake Goud from RFI Foundation and Raymond Van Ermen from the EPE and Dunia Bora Foundation. And today we're going to discuss the report and framework we have put together after months of discussing as a working group. While unfortunately our third co-chair, Kayode Babarinde from Africa Blockchain Institute, was not able to join us, we are also grateful for his contribution and his continued work in the space. So I'll let Blake and Raymond introduce themselves briefly. Please tell us briefly your role and your main area of focus. So Blake, get us started.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm Blake Goud, the CEO of the Responsible Finance Investment Foundation. We are a community interest company registered in the UK, working on the implementation of responsible finance within Islamic finance and in OIC markets. So my interest and area that I bring to this is around sustainable finance.
Wonderful. And Raymond, please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Raymond Van Ermen. I'm the president of the Dunia Bora Foundation, which is one of the members of the steering group of the blockchain for the UN values and the Sustainable Development Goals. Over to you.
Well, I'm so excited for our conversation today. As I mentioned, our supply chain and critical minerals report and work overall has provided a rigorous multi-stakeholder analysis that maps how blockchain and distributed ledger technologies can improve end-to-end visibility, traceability, and trust across global supply chains. We've had a particular focus on critical minerals that underpin strategic industries and national priorities. Our work has provided a structured foundation to understand supply chain complexity, identify gaps in due diligence and risk management, and articulate how verifiable digital infrastructures can enhance compliance, transparency, and economic resilience, basically from mine to market. A key takeaway is that the objective of this work is to fix broken supply chains through emerging technology, and the ultimate benefit is trust in global commerce. So Blake, take it away for us. We have sustainable finance requirements for critical minerals all over the world. It's very important. So what makes the global supply chain for critical minerals so important for the global energy transition?
So as you mentioned, the global energy transition is really what underpins a large proportion of the demand for critical minerals, and makes the supply chains important because sustainable finance includes the energy transition, but it also includes other environmental, social, and governance considerations, as well as a focus and prioritization to the Sustainable Development Goals. So critical minerals fit into this as inputs into many of the investments that are needed to make the global energy transition happen. There's also other industrial products where it's used that are considered strategic by countries producing them. And so it makes all of this revolve critically around how much we know about the supply chains of critical minerals. The substantial increase in demand that's been driven by the global energy transition increases the demand and price of critical minerals, and really is driving a lot of the new production, including from sources that are behind some of the conflict that's creating negative impacts from the supply chains. And then the financing sources that are mobilized across the value chain, from extraction, from processing, refining, from trade and manufacturing using the outputs, interacts with many ESG requirements across the world, in Europe, internationally with the International Sustainability Standards Board, as well as in places like the US, which has specific disclosures, that the Reg SD, conflict mineral disclosures for producers if they have critical minerals in their products, of that they know where they came from, that there's some traceability requirements. That's on the downstream side. On the upstream side, there's also, in the countries that are supplying critical minerals, they haven't always benefited from the extraction because of environmental harms and social impacts, including conflict from the production that comes about. And for many producing countries, these minerals are a key part of their plan for sustainable development. But that requires more than just being sources where there's extraction of the minerals and kind of the basic compliance for buyers. Countries extracting critical minerals often see most of the benefit as part of their sustainable development plans for moving further downstream into processing and refining to capture more of the value of the minerals, either domestically or regionally, rather than just being extracting the minerals and exporting them. And so the lack of visibility that they have in their supply chain, or that they can provide in their domestic supply chains, makes the investments behind moving up the value chain more difficult to finance, because investors place an elevated risk premium, which adds to the financing cost for projects in countries where production could be most beneficial for moving up the value chain, as well as increasing the needed supply for the global energy transition.
This is so important as we go digital overall, and the energy transition relying on the latest technologies as well. There's an increasing reliance for things like chips, batteries, and so on, that all rely on critical minerals that have to be physically mined and come from somewhere. I'm so proud to say that our work together has provided a framework to strengthen transparency and accountability in these very complex economic networks, and how stakeholders are operating within global markets where supply chain opacity can create hidden risks, from compliance blind spots to price volatility and geopolitical tension, especially with important reputational and other risks when it comes to sustainability. So we've positioned the role of blockchain-anchored provenance and transparency as tools to make supply flows more auditable, tamper-resistant, and more predictable. And we hope that this can resonate with institutions' need for more trustworthy data environments across product and risk domains. And this also comes from international conventions. So Raymond, why is it important for blockchain and other emerging technologies to be such a central part of international conventions and forums on critical minerals supply chains, where, as you had pointed out many times, that has not always been the case?
Well, Diana, emerging technologies, specifically blockchain, are no longer just nice-to-have innovations. They are becoming essential pillars of international policy and trade forums. The Global Standards Mapping Initiative, led by GBBC, serves as a critical bridge between technical developers on one end and global policymakers on the other end. While international forums provide the political will, technologies like blockchain provide practical proof. And without these tools, global green claims would remain unverifiable, and supply chain would remain vulnerable to fraud and disruptions. But the value of this report is also key in another context. The signing of the Washington Accords for Peace and Prosperity in December 2025, brokered by President Trump, marked a historic pivot in the Great Lakes region. The agreement is indeed centered on a minerals for security framework in exchange for regional stability and the withdrawal of foreign-backed forces. The DRC has granted the US and its partners strategic access to its critical mineral reserves. And the GSMI supply chain and critical minerals pilot could be the digital glue that makes this high-stakes political agreement operationally viable. In addition, it is extremely important to be aware that for African nations, these technologies are a tool for sovereignty. By having a transparent blockchain verified record of their resources, they can demand fairer prices and better financing from international banks that, as noted by Blake, were previously worried of conflict mineral risks. Over to you, Diana.
This is excellent. And it's so cool to see, as you say, these topics becoming tangible as we see continued international agreements take form in real life across countries with major implications. In the report and across the working group, we have identified 4 main challenges for global supply chains of critical minerals and corresponding opportunities where emerging technology can help align with international conventions. Challenge number 1 is supply chain complexity, which we identified as very important, but the opportunity with emerging technologies is to provide for better corridor management, which is an essential part of many international conventions, starting from the UN. Challenge number 2 is geopolitical risks, in which case the opportunity with emerging technologies to address this challenge is to promote better global justice by aligning priorities with international conventions. Challenge number 3 is systemic vulnerabilities due to lack of transparency and lack of security. The opportunity corresponding with emerging technology is greater transparency and security as mandated by international conventions. Challenge number 4, last but not least in the least of ways, is the presence of many guidelines and making due diligence very difficult because there's so many different requirements, which adds complexity. And the opportunity being blockchain technology in specific to provide a better record of data and enhance due diligence to improve compliance with these requirements, again, as mandated by national laws and international frameworks. So in the context of our decision frameworks, we've identified barriers to adopt blockchain technology and enhance due diligence, on the other hand, and provide mitigants through best practices to achieve better outcomes. And we hope this can become a useful toolbox for better due diligence and better implementation of strategies that are effective for more trustworthy critical minerals supply chains. So, Blake, how do we, for real, in practice, how do we ensure that these critical minerals, which are essential for the global transition, as discussed, are produced in a way that is beneficial not just to the consumers, but also to the supplying countries, often in emerging markets?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, one of the key places where benefit is created is moving up the value chain. So it's not just extract and export, but also including more refining, more processing, more manufacturing for batteries, for example. And all of that comes with challenges in terms of the sourcing and maintaining that transparency through the supply chain that is needed on the end of the buyers in order to import it. So more layers that you have at the country where it's being exported or extracted and exported from, you have to make sure that the data is produced all along the way so that the final product doesn't have gaps in its supply chain verifiability. And that comes with different challenges depending on where the original input of critical minerals is coming from. For large-scale production, they often have the scale to invest in more directly the project level in the application of technology, things like blockchain to trace each step of the process. But then also, in order for this to benefit supplying countries, it also has to address the fact that a lot of the production is small scale and artisanal mining, which comes with additional challenges in producing the data and the traceability that's needed to continue into that supply chain. And it's often done informally without access to formal financial services. that would come with some of the requirements to meet the traceability needs. The cost of providing that data is often beyond the economic capacity of these producers. There are environmental and social damage that is associated with some production practices that needs to be addressed, but one of the key things is making sure that the traceable process, the traceable supply chain is open still to these producers, so that the minerals that would still get produced aren't being there's not an incentive to work around that process and undermine the traceability that would create challenges for having this broader economic benefit stay within the producing countries. And so whether that's cost sharing mechanisms from buyers paying for some of that traceability, or other ways to make a pathway for even informal producers to become formal and become part of this traceable supply chain is all going to be needed to help make sure that the value is created both in the producing country, kind of whatever form of production is happening, as well as then for the buyers in the global energy transition that are using these batteries or the minerals for chips. So I think that's a big part that allows then for some of the conflict minerals to be more effectively screened out without creating situations where there's likely to be backlash for the use of technology and increasing compliance requirements for the non-conflict supply chains.
That is so well said, Blake. It's so important to think through the data and the underlying incentives, and also to consider how big the informal economy can be in many emerging economies, where it's more than half or potentially even 3/4 of the economy that's just unregistered and just can go ignored, but it's not because it's so significant. And I'm so excited to have worked with you and Raymond and the whole working group to connect supply chain resilience to broader market stability, especially in a way that would allow for more equitable economic incentives for economies that are highly dependent on critical minerals such as lithium, cobalt, rare earths, which are foundational inputs, as we said, for sectors like energy, technology, mobility, and so on. So Raymond, as we talk about putting this into practice, walk us through the pilot proposed by the working group and what it took to entail implementation and real-world examples.
Well, indeed, the working group has identified the Lobito Corridor as the ideal living laboratory for a flagship pilot project. The Lobito Corridor, a 1,300-kilometer railway linking the copper belt of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Zambia to the Atlantic port of Lobito in Angola, is the first major Western-backed strategic infrastructure project in Africa, with the US and EU having committed over $4 billion to the corridor as of early 2026. The pilot would be the digital layer that makes this physical corridor a modern, transparent trade route. It would transform the Lobito Corridor from a simple train track into a smart economic value chain. While the Trump administration views the Lobito Corridor as a strategic win for American industrial de-risking, the corridor states Angola, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Zambia see it as a vehicle for economic sovereignty. In 2026, these nations are shifting from being passive exporters to active participants in the global value chain. This allows Angola, DRC, and Zambia to attract high-tech processing plants because the final product is already pre-certified for the premium Western markets. In addition, as it has been noted, it is important to formalize the informal cross-border trade, which accounts for 30 to 40% of intra-regional trade in Southern Africa. The pilot digital IDs for small-scale traders and artisanal miners would bring them into the formal economy. And this allows the states to collect fair taxes while providing these citizens with access to formal banking and legal protection for the first time. A real-world application currently shaping the supply chain for cobalt and lithium in Africa is, for instance, the Resource Consortium Industrial Cobalt. This is arguably the most powerful blockchain initiative in the sector. It is a joint effort by major industry players like Glencore, CMOC, which is a Chinese company, Umicore, and Tesla. Other leading initiatives and champions are MindSpider and the Digital Battery Passport. And another one is RCS, Global and Better Mining, tackling precisely artisanal risks. As I indicated earlier, the pilot could be the digital glue that makes this high-stakes USA, DRC, Rwanda political agreement operationally viable. Here is how the pilot would contribute to the implementation of the peace deal. First, verifying the mineral ceasefire. A core challenge of the Washington Accords is ensuring that armed groups no longer fund themselves through smuggled minerals. And by establishing a blockchain-verified digital corridor from eastern DRC to the Lobito port, the pilot creates a clear distinction between legal, verified ore and illicit conflict minerals. Two, enabling the strategic asset reserve. Indeed, under the peace agreement, the DRC designated specific unlicensed mining areas as a strategic asset reserve for US and allied investment. Implementation requires absolute transparency to prevent claim jumping or double allocation of permits, which often triggers local conflict. The pilot would provide a shared ledger for concessions, and this ensures that US investors, the DRC government, and international monitors see the same real-time data regarding permit, boundaries, and extraction volumes, reducing the risk of administrative corruption that has historically undermined peace deals. Thirdly, turning Rwanda as a spoiler into Rwanda as a logistics partner. Indeed, the Accords propose a regional economic integration framework, shifting Rwanda's role from a suspected mineral conduit to an official logistics hub. To build trust, the DRC needs proof that minerals passing through or near the border are not being swapped or laundered. The pilot utilizes interoperable data standards, and by using the same blockchain protocols at the Rwanda border as in the Lobito corridor, both nations can co-manage a joint security coordination mechanism. They can track the mass balance, ensuring the amount of ore leaving a mine matches what arrives at a refinery, making it nearly impossible to inject smuggled minerals into the official supply chain. And fourthly, attracting the Trump-era private investment. The USA administration has emphasized that everybody is going to make a lot of money through this deal. However, Western institutional investors require de-risked environments. The standard would act as a compliance shield, and by adopting the pilot, the Lobito corridor provides US tech and auto companies with the audit trails they need to satisfy domestic ESG laws and the American industrial might under vertical comma requirements mentioned by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. It transformed a war zone into a bankable asset. Over to you, Diana.
Wonderful. And to finalize this conversation as we are nearing a close, we are so excited to offer actionable strategic intelligence beyond theory, and our report synthesizes global best practices proposing a toolbox of blockchain-enabled approaches to improve traceability and accountability, providing ultimately decision-ready insights to inform internal governance, strategic partnerships, compliance processes, and support, hopefully, all stakeholders in global critical minerals supply chains. So to close this conversation, I would like to ask Blake and Raymond for a brief key takeaway. What are your thoughts on the future of critical minerals supply chains? What will it take to get to the level of supply chain resilience that we aim for? If you could say it in 10 seconds. Blake.
I think it's looking at how technology maps together with the conditions on the ground, and not just technology on its own.
Where it gets real. I like it. Raymond.
Well, we are living in a new reality from a geopolitical, trade and technology standpoint in which blockchain could be a game changer, key for peace and prosperity. In early 2026, the Trump administration's strategic asset reserve policy views the DRC-Rwanda border not as a barrier, but as a processing bridge. And we are now waiting for a dialogue between the Trump administration and GBBC. Over to you.
Wonderful. Well, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much, and I look forward to further initiatives.